Veth had studied 17 species across the galaxy. He had written reports on the war dances of the Torvani, the death songs of the Kelish, and the strange calm of the Morathi hunters. His people, the Corvani, valued understanding above all things. They believed that to know another species was to know the universe itself. When the council assigned him to observe humans, Veth felt disappointed. Humans were new to the galactic stage. They had only joined the Alliance 30 years ago. Most scholars considered them unremarkable. They were not the strongest species. They were not the fastest. They did not have claws or fangs or natural armor. Their technology was decent but not impressive. A waste of my talents, Veth had complained to his mentor before leaving. His mentor, Old Korath, had simply smiled. Perhaps. Or perhaps not. Return and tell me what you learn. Now Veth stood in the docking bay of the joint military vessel called the Meridian. The ship served as a mobile base for Alliance operations in the outer sectors. It carried soldiers from 12 different species, but the human contingent was the largest. 200 humans lived and worked on this ship. Veth watched them move through the bay. They carried boxes, checked equipment, and talked with each other. Nothing seemed special about them. They looked soft and fragile compared to the armored Kelish or the massive Torvani. You must be the scholar. Veth turned and found himself looking at a human male. The man was average height for his species, with black hair cut short and dark eyes that seemed to study Veth with quiet interest. He wore a simple military uniform with marks that showed his rank. I am Veth of the Corvani, Veth said. I am here to observe and document human behavior during military operations. The human nodded. I'm Teho, captain of the human forces on this ship. I was told to help you with your research. Veth activated his recording device. Thank you, Captain. I have many questions. Perhaps we could begin with an interview? Teho smiled slightly. It was a small expression. But Veth noticed how it changed his whole face. Sure. But first, let me show you around. You'll learn more by watching than by asking. This was unusual. Most species preferred to talk about themselves. They enjoyed explaining their culture and their ways. But Teho seemed to think differently. Veth followed the captain through the ship. They passed through living quarters where humans rested on simple beds. They walked through a dining hall where humans ate together, laughing and talking loudly. They visited a training room where humans exercised their bodies with strange movements and heavy weights. Your people seem social, Veth observed. You spend much time together. Teho nodded. We're pack animals at heart. We don't do well alone. Pack animals? Veth found this interesting. But you have no natural pack structure. No alpha hierarchy like the Kelish. Not that kind of pack. Teho said. We choose our pack. Family, friends, the people we trust with our lives. They entered a smaller room where a group of humans sat cleaning weapons. One of them looked up. It was a female human with her dark hair tied back and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Captain, she said, standing up. This is the scholar? This is Veth. He'll be observing us for a while. Teho turned to Veth. This is Sergeant Yuna. She leads our ground assault team. If you want to understand human soldiers, watch her. Yuna studied Veth with an expression he could not read. Then she nodded once. Welcome aboard. Try to stay out of the way when things get loud. The flu. Things one friend. Veth did not understand the warning, but he recorded it anyway. Over the next several days, Veth observed everything. He watched humans eat their strange foods. He watched them train their bodies until they dripped with sweat. He watched them gather in small groups to talk, play games, and share drinks. What struck him most was their gentleness with each other. They touched constantly. A hand on a shoulder, a pat on the back. They hugged when meeting and hugged when parting. Their voices rose and fell with emotion. They laughed easily and often. Veth found himself confused. These were soldiers. They were trained to fight and kill. But they acted more like a family than a military unit. One evening, he found Teho sitting alone in an observation deck. The captain stared out at the stars. his face calm and thoughtful. "May I ask you something?" Veth said. Teho nodded without looking away from the stars. "Your people are gentle. You show much affection. Much warmth." Veth paused. "How do you fight? How do you kill? It seems against your nature." Teho was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft. "We fight because we love. Every soldier on this ship has someone they want to protect. Family back home, friends standing beside them. That love is why we fight. Thanks for watching." "But love is soft," Veth said. "War requires hardness." Teho finally looked at him. Something flickered in his dark eyes. Something that made Veth feel suddenly cold. "You've never seen humans fight," Teho said. "It was not a question. I have read reports. Reports don't capture it." Teho looked back at the stars. "We carry something inside us, Veth. Something old. Something from a time before we had words or tools. When danger comes to the ones we love, that something wakes up." Veth wanted to ask more, but an alarm suddenly screamed through the ship. Red lights flashed. A voice spoke over the communication system. "All personnel to battle stations. We have received a distress signal from Colony 7. Drekar forces have begun an attack." "Repeat." "Drekar forces are attacking Colony 7. Teho stood up. His face changed. The calm thoughtfulness disappeared. Something harder took its place. "Colony 7 has 12,000 civilians," he said. "Women, children, families." Veth watched as the gentle man transformed before his eyes. It was subtle but unmistakable. Teho's posture shifted. His movements became sharper. His eyes grew dark and focused. "Follow me if you want to observe," Teho said. "But stay close. And whatever you see, whatever happens, remember one thing." "What?" Veth asked. Teho looked at him. "We didn't start this, but we'll finish it." Then he walked away. And Veth felt something strange. It was a feeling he had never experienced in all his years of study. It took him a moment to identify it. Fear. He was afraid of the gentle man with the warm smile and the soft voice. He was afraid of what that man might become. Veth followed anyway. He was a scholar. He needed to understand. He did not know that understanding would cost him everything he thought he knew about the universe. The ship became a different place within minutes. Veth had observed military responses before. The Kelish moved with cold precision. The Torvani roared and beat their chests. The Morathi simply disappeared into silence before battle. Humans did none of these things. They ran, they shouted, they moved with a kind of organized chaos that seemed impossible to coordinate. Yet somehow, every human knew exactly where to go and what to do. Veth followed Teho to the command center. Officers from different species gathered around a large display that showed Colony 7. The planet was small, mostly agricultural. The display showed red dots, spreading across its surface, like a disease. "Drekar landing forces hit the main settlement an hour ago," an officer reported. "Ground defenses are failing. They're targeting the civilian shelters." The Drekar were known throughout the galaxy. They were raiders and slavers. They attacked weak targets, took what they wanted, and left destruction behind. They were not interested in territory or resources. They simply enjoyed causing pain. Veth noticed how the humans in the room changed when they heard about the civilian shelters. Their faces grew tight. Their hands formed fists. A low sound moved through them, almost like a growl. "How long until we arrive?" Teho asked. 6 hours at maximum speed." Teho's jaw tightened. "The colonists don't have 6 hours. We could send advance teams in drop pods," Yuna said. She had appeared beside Teho, her weapons already strapped to her body. "Hit them before the main force arrives." "That would be suicide," the Kelish commander said. "Drekar forces outnumber your advance teams 20 to 1. Yuna looked at the Kelish officer. Her expression did not change, but something in her eyes made the armored alien step back. "I wasn't asking for permission," she said. Teho raised a hand. "Yuna," She fell silent, but her eyes never left the display. The red dots continued to spread. "How many volunteers?" Tejo asked quietly. "Everyone," Yuna replied. "Every single human on this ship just volunteered for the advance drop." Veth recorded this exchange with growing confusion. The Kellish commander was right. An advance attack against such numbers was tactically foolish. The smart choice was to wait for the full force. Some colonists would die, but the overall mission would succeed. Yet the humans seemed unable to accept this logic. Tejo turned to the Kellish commander. "We'll take the advance drop. Have the main force follow as quickly as possible. You'll be slaughtered. Maybe." Tejo's voice was calm, but Veth sensed something beneath it. Something hot and barely contained. "But those are families down there. Children. We won't sit here while children die." The drop pod bay was organized chaos. Humans loaded weapons, checked armor, and prepared equipment. But Veth noticed something else happening between them. They were saying goodbye. A young soldier named Dong-Won embraced another soldier tightly. They pressed their foreheads together and whispered words Veth could not hear. A female soldier named Hana showed a photograph to her squad. It was a picture of two small children. Her children, Veth realized. "I'm coming home to you," she said to the picture. Then she tucked it inside her armor, close to her heart. Yuna moved through the bay, checking each soldier personally. She touched their shoulders. She looked into their eyes. She spoke quiet words that made them stand taller. Veth approached her. "May I ask a question?" Yuna glanced at him but continued her inspections. "Make it quick. You are outnumbered greatly. Many of you will die. Why do you still choose to fight?" Yuna stopped. She turned to face him fully. Her expression was hard, but her eyes held something deeper. "Did you see Hana's picture? Those are her babies. They're 4 and 6 years old." Yuna pointed across the bay. "Dong-Won? He's getting married next month. His partner is waiting back home, planning their wedding. Then why risk their lives for strangers?" Yuna stepped closer to Veth. Despite being smaller than him, she suddenly seemed very large. "Because on that planet, there are other mothers with babies, other people planning weddings, other families just trying to live their lives." Her voice dropped low, "And some monsters decided to hurt them. We don't let monsters hurt families. Ever." Tejo appeared beside them. He had changed into combat armor. Weapons hung from his body. But his face was the most striking change. All the warmth was gone. What remained was something ancient and cold. "Veth," he said. "You can observe from the command center. It will be safer. I wish to accompany you," Veth heard himself say. He did not know why. Something compelled him to witness this. Tejo studied him for a long moment. "Stay close to me. And whatever you see, don't get in the way." The drop pods were small and cramped. Veth found himself pressed against Tejo and 3 other soldiers. The humans had gone quiet. They sat with their eyes closed, breathing slowly and deeply. Veth used his people's natural ability to sense emotions. It was how Corvani scholars studied other species. They could feel what others felt. What he felt from the humans made him want to flee. Beneath their calm surfaces, something was waking up. It was like watching fire spread through dry wood. Slow at first, then faster and faster. It was rage, but not like any rage Veth had ever sensed. It was not hot and wild. It was focused, controlled, directed, and it was growing. 30 seconds to drop, a voice announced. Yuna spoke from another pod, her voice coming through the communication system. "Remember the mission. Protect the civilians. Stop the Drekar. And come home alive." "Home alive," the soldiers repeated. It sounded like a prayer. "For family," Tejo said quietly. "For family," everyone echoed. The pods launched. Veth felt the terrible force of acceleration press against his body. Through a small window, he could see the planet rushing toward them. Fire surrounded the pod as they entered the atmosphere. The humans did not seem afraid. They were past fear now. They had entered a state that Veth did not understand. Their hearts beat slowly. Their breathing was steady, but the fire inside them burned hotter with every passing second. Below them, the colony burned. Smoke rose from destroyed buildings. Drekar ships filled the sky like vultures, landing in 60 seconds. The pilot announced, "We're coming in hot." Enemy forces everywhere. Teho opened his eyes. They were different now. Darker. Deeper. Something ancient looked out from behind them. "Good," he said. And his voice was no longer the gentle voice Veth had come to know. It was the voice of something that had been sleeping for thousands of years, and it had finally woken up. The pod hit the ground, and the doors exploded open, and the humans poured out into the smoke and fire and blood. And Veth saw what humans became when someone hurt the people they loved. He would never forget it. He would never be able to forget it. The world was fire and chaos and screaming. Veth stumbled from the drop pod, his senses overwhelmed by the horror around him. Buildings burned. Bodies lay in the streets. The air was thick with smoke and the terrible smell of death, but he forced himself to watch. He forced himself to record. That was his purpose, his duty. The Drekar had not expected the attack. They turned from their slaughter of civilians, confused by the sudden arrival of enemy forces. They were large creatures, covered in dark scales and sharp spines. Their mouths were filled with teeth meant for tearing flesh. There were hundreds of them, maybe thousands. The humans numbered less than 50. Veth expected the humans to take cover, to form defensive positions, to fight carefully against such terrible odds. He was wrong. Teho raised his weapon and charged directly into the enemy lines. No hesitation. No fear. He fired as he ran, and every shot found its target. Drekar fell before him like grass before a blade, but it was not his accuracy that made Veth's blood turn cold. It was his face. Teho was smiling, not a smile of joy, not a smile of pleasure. It was something older, something that belonged to ancient predators who hunted in darkness. It was the smile of something that had found its prey. The other humans followed their captain into the chaos. They moved as one creature with many bodies. They covered each other, supported each other, killed for each other, and they were terrifying. Veth had observed many warrior species. The Kelish were strong and disciplined. The Torvani were massive and unstoppable. The Morathi were silent and deadly. But humans were something else entirely. They fought with a rage that seemed to burn the air itself. They screamed as they killed. They laughed as they bled. They kept moving forward even when wounded. Even when dying. Yuna appeared from the smoke like a spirit of war. 2 Drekar charged at her. She ducked under the first one's attack and drove her blade up through its throat. Before it fell, she had already spun to face the second. She blocked its strike, shattered its arm, and crushed its skull with a single brutal blow. Blood covered her face. Her eyes were wild and bright. She looked at Veth for just a moment, and he felt his heart stop. There was nothing human in those eyes. Something else looked out at him. Something old. Something hungry. Then she was gone, diving back into the battle with a scream that made the Drekar hesitate. Veth pressed himself against a wall and tried to understand what he was witnessing. He reached out with his emotional senses, trying to feel what the humans felt. The sensation almost destroyed him. It was like touching fire, like diving into a star. The emotions were too intense, too powerful. They burned through his mind and left him gasping. Rage. Endless, bottomless rage. But it was not mindless. It had purpose, direction. It was rage in service of something greater, love. Veth understood suddenly. The rage was not separate from the love. It was born from it. When humans loved something deeply enough, and that something was threatened, the love transformed. It became something terrible and beautiful and unstoppable. A small group of Drekar had cornered civilians in a building nearby. Veth could hear children crying inside. Could hear mothers begging for mercy. Dong-won, the young soldier who had embraced his lover before the drop, saw the same thing. His face changed. The transformation was immediate and total. He ran toward the building alone. 3 Drekar stood in his way. He killed the first one before it could raise its weapon. The second managed to slash his arm, cutting deep into flesh and muscle. Dongwon did not even slow down. He grabbed the Drekar's spine with his wounded arm and ripped it out of the creature's body. The third Drekar tried to flee. Dongwon did not let it. He reached the building and stood in the doorway, blood pouring from his wounds. More Drekar approached. He raised his weapon with hands that should not have been able to move. "You don't touch them," he said. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "You don't ever touch them." He killed 6 more Drekar before his body finally gave out. But by then, Yuna's squad had arrived. They carried him to safety while others protected the civilians. The battle raged for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. The humans never stopped. They never retreated. They pushed forward into impossible odds, driven by something the Drekar could not understand. Fear began to spread through the enemy ranks. Veth saw it happen. The Drekar were slavers and raiders. They attacked weak targets. They were not prepared for this. They were not prepared for prey that fought back with such savage fury. A Drekar commander tried to rally his forces. He roared orders and threats. But his soldiers were looking at the humans with something Veth had never seen in Drekar eyes. Terror. Taeho appeared before the commander. His armor was cracked and scorched. His face was covered in blood and dirt. But he was still smiling that ancient, terrible smile. "You came here to hurt families," Taeho said. His voice was quiet, almost conversational. "You came here to kill children." The commander raised his weapon. Taeho moved faster than Veth's eyes could follow. The commander's weapon fell to the ground, along with the arm that had held it. "You made a mistake," Taeho continued. He stepped closer to the screaming commander. "You woke us up." The commander tried to speak, tried to beg. Taeho did not let him. When it was over, Taeho stood among the bodies of his enemies and looked at the remaining Drekar forces. Blood dripped from his hands. His eyes burned with the fire that Veth now understood lived inside every human. "Run," Taeho said. Just one word, soft and quiet. The Drekar ran. They abandoned their ships, their weapons, their wounded. They fled into the wilderness where the main Alliance force would eventually find them and finish what the humans had started. The battle was over. Veth emerged from his hiding place on shaking legs. The street was filled with bodies. Most of them were Drekar. The smell of death was everywhere. But in the distance, he could hear something else. Children crying with relief as human soldiers carried them to safety. Mothers thanking the strangers who had saved their families. The sounds of life continuing despite the horror. Veth looked at Taeho. The captain stood motionless among the destruction, his weapon hanging from his hand. The fire in his eyes was fading slowly. The ancient thing was going back to sleep, but it was still there. Veth could sense it. Waiting. Always waiting. Ready to wake again if someone threatened what humans loved. Veth had come here to study humans. To understand them. To document their behavior for scholarly purposes. He had found something he never expected. He had found the most dangerous species in the galaxy. And the most dangerous thing about them was that they did not fight for territory or resources or power. They fought for love. And love, Veth now understood, was the most terrifying force in the universe. The silence after battle was strange and heavy. Veth moved through the ruined streets, his recording device still active. He told himself he was documenting, studying, performing his duty as a scholar. But the truth was simpler. He was trying to understand. The humans had transformed into something that still haunted his mind. They had become creatures of pure rage and violence, unstoppable forces of destruction that had shattered a superior enemy through sheer fury alone. And now, less than an hour later, they were something else entirely. Veth found Hana sitting on a pile of broken stones. The soldier who had shown her children's photograph before the battle. She had a deep cut on her forehead and burn marks on her arms, but she was not thinking about her wounds. A small child sat in her lap. A colonist's daughter, maybe 5 years old. The child had been crying, but now she was asleep. her head resting against Hana's chest. Hana stroked the child's hair and hummed a soft melody. Her eyes were gentle, peaceful. The wild thing that had possessed her during battle was completely gone. Her parents are dead, Hana said when she noticed Veth watching. Her voice was thick with emotion. We found her hiding under their bodies. They used themselves to shield her from the attack. Veth did not know what to say. He recorded the scene in silence. I'm going to stay with her until we find her other family, Hana continued. She shouldn't be alone right now. The same woman who had killed 17 Drekar with her bare hands was now cradling a stranger's child, like her own daughter. Veth moved on, his confusion growing deeper. He found Dong-won in a medical tent. The young soldier had lost too much blood. His wounds were severe. A medical officer worked frantically to save his life. Will he survive? Veth asked. The officer shook her head. I don't know. He shouldn't even be alive now. Any other species would have died from these wounds immediately. Dong-won's eyes opened slightly. He looked at Veth with a gaze that was fading but still aware. Did we save them? He whispered. The families in the building? Veth nodded. You saved them. All of them. Dong-won smiled. It was a genuine smile, warm and peaceful despite the pain. Good, he said. Tell Jay. Tell him I'm sorry about the wedding. Tell him I love him. His eyes closed. The medical officer cursed and worked faster. Veth stepped away, unable to watch. He found Taeho near the center of what had been the main settlement. The captain sat on the steps of a destroyed building, staring at nothing. Blood still stained his hands and face. He had not cleaned himself. Near him, Yuna lay on the ground with her head in his lap. Her eyes were closed. For a terrifying moment, Veth thought she was dead. Then he saw her chest rising and falling slowly. She was only sleeping. Exhausted beyond measure, she had finally allowed herself to rest. Taeho's hand moved gently through her hair. His fingers, the same fingers that had torn through Drekar flesh, now touched her with impossible tenderness. Tears ran down his face. Captain? Veth approached slowly, uncertain if he should interrupt. Taeho did not look up. We lost 8 soldiers. 8 good people who will never go home to their families. But you saved thousands of civilians, Veth said. The colony survives because of your sacrifice. I know. Taeho's voice was hollow. I know the math. I've done this before. I'll do it again. But knowing doesn't make it hurt less. Veth sat down on the steps beside him. He no longer knew what role he was playing. Scholar? Observer? Something else? I don't understand your species, Veth admitted. What I saw today, it terrified me. You became something I have no words for. Monsters wearing human faces. Taeho finally looked at him. His eyes were red from crying, but they held no anger at Veth's words. We are monsters, he said quietly. All humans are. We carry them inside us, these beasts from our ancient past. When we were prey animals fighting to survive in a dangerous world, when every day was a battle against predators that wanted to eat our children. But you control it, Veth said. You don't let it consume you. Most of the time. Taeho looked down at Yuna's sleeping face. We've spent thousands of years learning to cage the monster, to keep it sleeping. We build societies and rules and laws to keep it contained. What wakes it? Taeho was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Threat to the pack, to the people we love. The monster doesn't care about territory or wealth or power. It only cares about one thing: protecting the family. Yuna stirred slightly. Her hand found Taeho's and held it tightly. Even in sleep, she sought comfort from her pack. The Drekar killed families today, Taeho continued. They came here to murder and enslave innocent people, children, mothers, fathers. They threatened our pack. And so the monster woke up, but now it sleeps again. Taeho nodded slowly. Now it sleeps. Because the threat is gone. Because the family is safe. He looked at Veth with eyes that seemed older than his years. This is what humans are, Veth. We are gentle creatures who want nothing more than to love and be loved. But when something threatens that love, we become the most dangerous thing in existence. How do you live with that? Veth asked. How do you carry such violence inside you and still remain kind? We have to. Taeho's hand continued its gentle movement through Yuna's hair. The monster is always there. Always waiting. If we let it control us, we become the very thing we fight against. So we cage it. We only release it when we have no other choice. And then we put it back. Veth considered this. The Corvani had no such internal struggle. They were scholars and thinkers, peaceful by nature and culture. They had never needed to develop such terrible capabilities, but perhaps that was why they had nearly been enslaved by the Drekar centuries ago. Perhaps that was why they now relied on warrior species for protection. Your species is remarkable, Veth finally said. And terrifying. And beautiful. Taeho smiled slightly. It was a tired smile, heavy with grief and exhaustion. But it was genuine. We're just humans, he said. We love too much. We feel too deeply. And when someone hurts the people we love, we burn everything down to keep them safe. The main Alliance fleet arrived as the sun began to set. Medical ships descended to help the wounded. Supply ships brought food and shelter for the survivors. Military vessels hunted down the fleeing Drekar. Veth watched as the humans slowly came back together. They gathered their dead with gentle reverence. They comforted each other with touches and words. They cried together and held each other. The monsters were gone. Only the humans remained. Kind, gentle, loving humans who would destroy worlds to protect a single child. Veth had studied 17 species across the galaxy. He had never encountered anything like this. And he knew, with absolute certainty, that he would never be the same. 3 months passed before Veth returned to his homeworld. He had stayed with the humans longer than planned. He told himself it was for research, for documentation, for scholarly purposes. But the truth was simpler. He could not bring himself to leave. He attended the memorial service for the fallen soldiers. He watched as Taeho spoke about each one by name, sharing stories and memories. He saw Jae, Dongwon's lover, collapse with grief when they gave him the folded flag. Dongwon had survived his wounds but lost the use of his legs. He sat in a chair beside Jae, holding his hand, alive when he should have been dead. Veth watched the human ceremony of mourning. The tears, the embraces, the songs sung in honor of the dead. He recorded none of it. Some things were too sacred to reduce to data. He found Hana one evening, sitting with the orphaned child she had rescued. The little girl, whose name was Min-Ah, had not left Hana's side since the battle. They had formed a bond that transcended species or circumstance. I'm going to adopt her, Hana told Veth. She lost her family. I have enough love to share mine with her. What about your own children? Your mission duties? Hana smiled, and Veth saw in that smile the same warmth he had first noticed in the humans. The warmth that seemed impossible to reconcile with the violence he had witnessed. My children will have a sister. My mission is protecting families. She looked at Minna, who slept peacefully against her shoulder. Sometimes protection means fighting. Sometimes it means opening your arms and letting someone in. Veth spent his final week with Taeho and Yuna. They had both recovered from their wounds, though some scars would never fully heal. They moved through their days with calm purpose, training new soldiers, planning operations, living their lives. On his last night aboard the Meridian, Veth sat with them in the observation deck where he had first heard Taeho speak of the monster within. I don't know how to write my report, Veth admitted. I have observed many species. I have documented their behaviors and capabilities, but I have never seen anything like humans. What will you say? Yuna asked. Veth was quiet for a long moment, gathering his thoughts. I will say that humans are a paradox. You are the gentlest species I have ever encountered. You form deep bonds with strangers. You adopt orphans without hesitation. You weep for the dead and celebrate the living with equal passion. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. But you are also the most dangerous species in existence. You carry inside you an ancient fire, a rage born from thousands of generations of survival. When your loved ones are threatened, you transform into something that terrifies even me. Teho nodded slowly. That sounds accurate. But what I don't understand, Veth continued, is how you contain it. How you live peaceful lives with such capacity for destruction sleeping inside you. Yuna leaned forward. Her eyes held the same intensity that had frightened Veth during the battle, but now it was focused on understanding rather than killing. We don't contain it, she said. We channel it. I don't understand. The rage, the fire, the monster, whatever you want to call it, it's not separate from us. It's not something we fight against. It's part of who we are. Yuna's voice was steady, certain. Every human learns from childhood to direct that energy into building things, creating things, protecting things. The same force that makes us dangerous in battle makes us fierce in love, Teho added. Our greatest artists, our most dedicated healers, our most tireless builders, they all channel the same fire. The passion that drives us to destroy our enemies also drives us to create beauty and save lives. Veth considered this. It was a concept his species had no framework for. The Corvani were scholars precisely because they lacked such intense emotions. They observed the universe with calm detachment. You are saying, Veth said slowly, that your capacity for violence and your capacity for love are the same thing? Two sides of one coin. Teho agreed. You cannot have one without the other. Humans who feel no love also feel no rage. Humans who feel no rage are incapable of deep love. The stars drifted past the observation window. Somewhere out there, colonies and civilizations continued their existence, unaware of how close they had come to destruction, unaware of the terrible, beautiful creatures who had saved them. My people will fear you, Veth said finally. When I share my observations, they will see humans as a threat. Many species do, Yuna said without concern. We're used to it, but I will also tell them this. Veth stood and faced the two humans who had changed his understanding of the universe. I will tell them that humans are the best friends any species could ask for, that your loyalty is absolute, that your love is boundless, that anyone fortunate enough to be claimed by humans as family will never face danger alone. He paused, gathering himself for the final truth. I will tell them that the safest place in the galaxy is behind a human, and the most dangerous place in the galaxy is in front of one who is protecting someone they love. Teho smiled, that warm, genuine smile that seemed so impossible from someone Veth had watched tear through enemies like paper. That's a good description. Will you be okay? Yuna asked. There was genuine concern in her voice. What you saw? Veth nodded slowly. I will never be the same. What I witnessed burned through my soul. I will carry it forever. Is that bad? Veth thought about the question. He thought about the gentle humans who had become monsters to save strangers. He thought about Dongwon sacrificing his body for children he had never met. He thought about Hana adopting an orphan because she had enough love to share. He thought about the fire. No, he finally said. It is not bad. It is simply true. I have seen something profound, something ancient, something that I believe exists at the heart of what makes the universe worth living in. He moved toward the door, then stopped and turned back. Thank you, he said, for letting me see what you truly are. For trusting me with your terrible, beautiful secret. Teho and Yuna watched him go, two humans carrying their ancient fire quietly within them, ready to burn the universe down for love, ready to rebuild it with the same hands. Veth returned to his homeworld. He wrote his report. He presented his findings to the Council of Scholars. Some were frightened, as he predicted. They spoke of containing the human threat, of limiting human expansion, of treating them as dangerous animals. Veth spoke against these views. He argued for partnership, for friendship, for trust. You do not cage the fire, he told the council. You stand beside it and let it warm you. You earn its protection by offering your own loyalty in return. The council debated for months. In the end, They chose the path Veth recommended. The Corvani became one of humanity's closest allies in the galactic community. Years later, when a Drekkar fleet threatened Corvani space, human warships arrived before the enemy could fire a single shot. Teho, now an admiral, led the fleet personally. "You are our family now," he told the Corvani leaders. "No one touches our family." The Drekkar fleet retreated without a battle. They had learned their lesson. They knew what happened when humans fought for family. And Veth, old now but still watching, still studying, saw the fire burn once more in human eyes. Still terrible. Still beautiful. Still the most powerful force in the universe. Love, transformed into the will to protect. He had observed humanity's battle rage, and it had burned through his soul forever. But now he understood. That was not a tragedy. It was a gift.